In the year 2023, as the mantle of the G20 presidency finally fell upon our nation, our government was very quick to leverage this political advantage and carve a foothold for India in the global sphere. As a result, a conference of such enormity and magnitude was held that it became responsible for yielding extraordinary amounts of public participation and popularity that almost no other global forum had received in the past. The Leaders' Declaration, more specifically the G20 New Delhi's Leaders' Declaration that came out of the two-day conference, is an 83-paragraph legal document put together by the G20 Forum, and it proposes solutions to issues such as, but not limited to, the challenges towards green development, technological transformation, digital public infrastructure, international taxation, gender inequality, so on and so forth. However, are these challenges really some things that the G20 can deal with? Let's look at it. One must note that the G20 is primarily a financial institution. In fact, it was formed after the Asian economic crisis of 1997, and until a few years ago, it consisted only of a meeting of the finance ministers of the states and not the prime ministers. Now, by this very virtue, these issues that I just mentioned lie beyond the realm of G20. Nonetheless, our leaders claim that the G20 can be successful in solving these. Furthermore, in light of the shortcomings of the United Nations to foster a peaceful planet, they claim that G20 will become that harbinger of tranquility that finally succeeds in mitigating conflict and fostering global peace. However, I, as a person, vehemently and completely disagree. Allow me to explain why. First of all, let us look at the Oxford Dictionary definition of peace, which states that peace is the absence of war and violence. The G20, by definition, is an economic forum. Now, while some people may argue that the spheres of economics and politics are too closely intertwined, and hence by fostering a flourishing global economy, the G20 inevitably fosters peace. And theoretically, that is a great argument. However, we must look at the real world impact of this one theory. For instance, the G20 has had no tangible impact on the Russia-Ukraine war. Though a document was proposed to help mitigate the conflict in Ukraine, it never succeeded because there were many nations that disagreed with it. Furthermore, the harsh Israel-Palestine conflict that is going on, once again, the G20 has had no constructive impact. Second argumentation can be that the G20 in its entirety is a forum, not an organization. And in legal jargon, what that means is it does not possess any influence upon international law as opposed to an organization. It is a recommendatory body. It can give guidelines and it is up to each state to fulfill them. So now I ask, how can an institution that does not possess influence upon international law bring about international peace? Alright, moving on, it must also be noted that the G20 is made up of only 19 countries and 2 unions. So how do a handful of countries, no matter how powerful they may be, get the right to make decisions that will affect almost 200? That again is a shortcoming of the G20. Furthermore, a very interesting factor to note is that the very countries in the G20 are the ones producing the most WMDs, weapons of mass destruction. So, on one hand, these are the countries that produce the weapons that destroy the planet, and on the other hand, they argue they will be the saviors of the planet. I'm sorry if that becomes a little hypocritical for me to digest. And finally, many people argued that the theme for this year, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future, in its very essence implies peace. And I agree that it does. But are we forgetting that presidency is rotational? This theme will change every year. What happens next year when the theme does not revolve around peace? And with that, I rest my case.